jump down and move it all around. Put your hands on the ground, put your hands on the ground. Take one step left and one step right.
Put your hands back on the ground, put them off the ground.
I'm sitting here in this here meeting with me and my best friend Johnny. A little bit of Johnny on the pod, a little bit of Antonicus all night long. A little
bit of folk up in this bitch.
A little bit of Arnold. Yes, it's Mitch.
I let the dogs out. Ooh,
So, fun fact, we've been recording ever since I started my singing, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Ludic Lounge. Antonicus Aurelius Maximus IV. And as
I probably laughed over all of that. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. That's okay. That's fine. And with me, as always, our friend, our pal, the man behind the mask.
And the hair, who is perpetually surprised. Johnny Colombo's in the house. And John. And I'm going to get it out of the squeaky chair that Anthony hates so much.
God, I hate that fucking chair. You know how many edits on our last podcast, the My Hero Academia roundtable we did, that I had to edit out almost every squeak. A few squeaks made it because there were points being made while the squeaking was happening, and I'm not good enough to actually isolate the squeak.
Yeah, that's more my bad. I need a new fucking chair. But that's besides the point. But we are coming off a very successful last podcast with My Ludic Academia, I would say.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it since it dropped because I literally listened to every second of it as I was editing it. So I'm like, yeah, I pretty much know how you're going.
I'm good. I will just respond to the comments, but I don't need to hear any more of this because fuck that squeaky chair.
Yes, fuck that squeaky chair.
It's also the second most crowded episode we've had, people-wise, because, the other one was just, President of Hollywood with the five of us counting your wife.
Yeah, that was probably the most packed. And we didn't have our mics, so everything sounded like hot garbage.
Yeah, it's a learning experience here at the Ludic Lounge cast, so it's always growing, expanding. Don't make it dirty. I can see it in your face. Don't do it.
Like John's penis. I had to. It's Tourette's. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fair.
Speaking of
fair.
Yes, John, I am wearing my XFL Dallas Renegades t-shirt. I'm so glad you noticed. And the reason I'm wearing that, John, is because some entertainment news, more like sporting news, Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, purchased the defunct, bankrupt XFL from bankruptcy. He took it out of the depths of the trash. He gave bankruptcy the smack down.
And the people's elbow.
You could say that he bought the XFL when it was at its rock bottom.
Oh, file that. That was bad. That was real bad.
That's not my joke. I heard it from a radio host. So
that's fair.
I'm stealing it.
As you as a fan, everybody kind of loves The Rock because it's just, he's effortlessly charming and has been, the entirety of our lives because, we were there at the beginning of that career. But how do you as a fan feel about The Rock making this kind of a purchase? I know he's working with a number of partners. It's a big effort on his part because it always seems like he's like diversifying and just trying to keep his interests wide and varied.
He's definitely has one of the most diverse portfolios of any like multimillionaire that is in the business right now. But being a fan of the XFL, I'm actually very much excited. So the XFL did actually very decent numbers for being a spring football league. The hat I'm wearing on my head is from its predecessor, the AAF, the Alliance of American Football. That was not Vince McMahon's product. That was the one that happened before his second go at the XFL, and that failed miserably. But this XFL had a lot behind it. It did very decent numbers on both ESPN, ABC, and Fox. And they had a lot of new and renovated things that I think brought a lot to football. For example, they would interview players or kickers like right after they would do a play. A great example is there was a field goal kicker who missed a pretty long field goal, and they interviewed him like right after. And you don't necessarily see that in the NFL stage, right? So you got a lot more personable. And one of my favorite things they would do is after a game, the victors of the game would like do a Bud Light seltzer. They called it like the Seltzer Lounge or something like that. And they would literally like just pound Bud Light seltzers. They would just shotgun them. Yeah, it was great. And not only that, but the fans actually loved it. I mean, a couple of examples that come to mind were the Washington Football Club. Their fans would, every home game, they would come and try to add more beer cups to this beer snake they were making. And it got to the point where, I shit you not, this beer snake went like all the way to the top of the stadium, all the way almost to the field, for just how long they made of just plastic cups from their beers.
I think you tagged me on Twitter for that like forever ago, and it's just like made its way to the front of my mind.
Yeah.
Oh my
it was
God.
fantastic.
What a bunch of nerds in the best way.
And there I can't remember which football club this guy was a part of, but one of the guys was caught on the camera, like, you know how people shotgun beers, and I just talked about this. This dude literally shotgun cheese slices for some fucking reason. He literally would like take bites out of cheese slices right now, like facing the camera. And it was just epic. And it was just like little quirks like that made this football league like super exciting. Not to mention some of the changes they made on the field, which I won't bore everybody about, but it was very interesting. And having The Rock purchase it from bankruptcy with his limited partners gives me hope, because again, the numbers showed great. It was just because of goddamn coronavirus that everything had to shut down.
Yeah. And that's put a number of dampening effects on a lot of things. And that, you know, it kind of tees up some things that we've talked about this week, you know, off mic, at least with like the movie business. But I'm excited. I'm curious to see what happens with, you know, with the XFL now that The Rock and his partners have purchased it. Do they, you know, how do they get that momentum back? And it's just like, when do they get that momentum back? Because it seems like we're kind of, you know, stuck in the long haul of staying in quarantine seems to be getting longer and longer. So it's just like, how do you turn around an investment like that in this environment?
Yeah, it's really tough. The only thing they can go by, I mean, it's not going to, don't get me wrong, the XFL 3.0 at this point isn't going to happen probably for another year or two. It's just not, because you're going to have to renovate. I mean, then you got to talk about, are the teams going to be keeping their names? Is it going to be the same teams? What's going to happen there?
Do you ask players to wait for 2 years before they can actually play some football, you know?
Yeah, and I'm not too worried about that aspect of it, because the whole thing with the XFL, they would take like the undrafted guys who didn't get drafted in the NFL or didn't get invited, a lot of practice squad guys, a lot of like journeyman people that were in, you know, that never didn't make it to the NFL, maybe weren't the upper echelon in college, but were still good enough to maybe make the XFL, but just couldn't. So there's going to be a need, like there's going to be labor there. I'm not worried about that aspect, but what I'm worried about, and what we're seeing in a lot of current sports, because again, baseball's back. I've been loving watching some baseball. Football is going to be back from all reports. They're going to go full swing. They're not going to do a bubble like the NBA is doing. And of course, like I said, as previously mentioned, the NBA is back and they're starting their bubble, for the most part, seems to be doing very, very well. Only a few reported cases of COVID. Their bubble, they're doing it literally on Disney World in Orlando, Florida, in a few various hotels, and minus a few couple players, you know, breaking the rules as far as, you know, getting out, passing the quarantine line. One famous basketball player, Lou Williams, for the Los Angeles Clippers, exited the bubble, proceeded to go to Atlanta in one of the more famous strip clubs there, and proceeded to get busted there because he was trying to get wings, was his excuse.
Sure. Wings.
Yeah.
Is that what the kids call it these days?
You know what? I've heard they have very juicy breasts and thighs there.
The juiciest and the breastiest, I guess. By bubble, you mean like a quarantine zone, basically, right?
Yeah, like a clean zone.
Okay. I thought so. I was a little unfamiliar with the term, so I picked up what you were putting down, but I just wanted to, you know, be sure for the audience at home who was a little unaware.
Oh yeah,
that's some crazy ass shit, man.
It is some crazy shit. But whereas the NBA has been succeeding, baseball did not do this whole bubble clean area thing. They're actually doing traveling. They adjusted some of their rules to where now a lot of teams are just going to play the teams in their conference.
Yeah.
And not only in their conference, but so you have the National League and the American League in baseball.
Of course.
So, but you have like the National League West, the American League West. So what's going to happen is, for the most part, in this 60-game sprint, they're going to not only be playing their divisional rivals, but they'll be playing the American League version of the West too. So, for example, I'm a San Diego Padres fan. So we played the Giants already. We played the Diamondbacks, which are in Arizona. We're going to we're in the process of playing the Dodgers, and then at some point we're going to play like the American League versions, like the Oakland A's,
Right.
the Mariners, et cetera, et cetera.
I remember seeing something that there was some kind of some COVID cases, but I don't know. Do you like?
So one
do you
team
foresee which team?
So the Miami Marlins, because Florida's a shit show right now with their COVID cases.
Why is it always Florida? Why?
Florida is literally the saggy ball sack of the United States.
Yeah.
Sorry to all of our listeners in Florida. None of you. So essentially what ended up happening, because Florida is such a hot spot, something happened and one player got infected, and then it turned into 12 players got infected. Then it turned into literally like more than 12 players on the entire team. So now the team had to put their season on pause. But Major League Baseball is in the, since it's not the Yankees or the Dodgers or the Red Sox or any of these bigger name teams, essentially they're like, nope, all full go. You're all just going to pause your season, get some scrub players, and figure this shit out.
Fuck. That's some bullshit.
Well, it is some bullshit, because essentially it's the owners and Major League Baseball wanting to get as much money as they can, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, at this point, you're losing so much from, no ticket sales and no concession sales and so on and so on. But you have to get some kind of advertisement money or whatever have you. But
yeah,
it's
exactly.
just like, at what point is it just like money's no longer the concern here? It's just like, let's save some fucking lives. But
it's funny. It's funny you mention that, because there's a starting pitcher, I want to say, of the Boston Red Sox. I can't remember his name to save my life, but he's a young pitcher, great prospect. He was going to have such a great season. He got diagnosed with COVID. And he recovered to a degree to where he's not testing positive anymore, but he's got longer lasting effects from it, to where he's now has a heart condition based off of it. Because
so he's not as effective of a player anymore.
Oh yeah. And like his career could be over. And it's such a scary thing, right? Because yes, COVID, from what we have reported, is it is a disease that attacks the respiratory system, but your respiratory system kind of helps a lot of your other major functions in the body, folks. So just because, you may be breathing fine now doesn't necessarily mean that a month after you're diagnosed, you're still not going to have breathing problems, or in this case, heart problems, or gastrointestinal problems, anything like that. Like a lot of these things, one thing affects the other. And that's why some of these deaths are ruled COVID deaths, because this person may have died of pneumonia, but they also had COVID, and COVID flared up pneumonia symptoms, which, in turn killed the person.
So Anthony, what you're saying is, wear your goddamn masks and stay home, people.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a, I had somebody tell me that's, like a liberal kind of perspective. It's like bullshit. It's just like, at this point, we're just people should just be more concerned about, keeping everybody safe. But apparently we can't fucking do that.
Well, that's the thing. They're making this wearing of mask a political thing. It's like, this is not a political thing, guys. Wear a mask. You're trying to, protect others. You're trying to make sure that this thing doesn't spread. We're trying to put a dampen on it. Stamp it out like all these other countries internationally have got a huge control on. So that way we can open up in full earnest and actually do the shit we need to do.
And to go along with your entertainment news, I mean, a couple days ago this week, Disney shareholder call was conducted, and we heard the news that the live action adaptation of the Disney classic Mulan, which was set to have premiered back in March. It was one of those first movies that was impacted by the COVID shelter-in-place shutdowns. And it has been moved, I think, a total of 3 times. It's not the only movie to have been moved 3 times. I think like Tenet and Wonder Woman 1984 has been moved just as much, if not most movies.
Yeah, essentially any major blockbuster movie at this point.
Yeah, and you've seen, the trend has been, where they can release, they will try to release it. I haven't really seen much, because I think a lot of theaters across the globe are still closed. But I know that for the most part, some studios have pivoted to direct-to-video. The Invisible Man from Universal was one of the big ones. Trolls, the newest Trolls movie, was a big success, and it's so much so that Universal was going to pivot a lot more quickly. So when it comes to post-COVID, whatever that is, the shelf life for some Universal movies are probably going to be looking at 3 weeks because they cut a deal with I believe AMC because there was some internal debate between the movie theater chain and the movie studio about you can't do this, and because you're going to do this, we're not going to play your movies ever. And then Universal is like, hold on, wait a minute, don't get too brash. Let's have a conversation. They had a conversation. But that's a whole separate thing to the Disney thing. Disney announced that Mulan will be going to Disney Plus on September 3rd. Don't quote me on that. It's beginning of September.
Yeah.
But it was the movie date that they had, I think, lined up before. So it's going to Disney Plus at a premium of $29.99. So if you're a Disney Plus subscriber, on top of the fee you pay to get access to Disney Plus, you can buy this movie to rent. I don't think it's like a purchase. It's just a rental. But this is off the top of my head, and I would need to pull up the actual article.
Or you can just wait like a year, and it's probably just gonna slowly drop that fee.
I mean, or it'll just end up on Disney Plus anyway. I think the larger question is, what does this mean for the theatrical model? Because you and I had talked about this before, Anthony, that it seems like that's going to be the trend for most of Disney's releases. So far, and I had told you that Black Widow was going to follow this, and it was announced. It seemed that it was announced. It turns out that announcement was false. So far, Mulan is just a one-time occurrence. But to be on Front Street, and this is my perspective based on somebody who has watched the film scene as much as I have, I think what Disney is doing with Mulan is an absolute test run. They are seeing if this model can actually work. And there's positives and negatives to it, I would say. I mean, the positive is that you are paying essentially the cost of 2 movie tickets for a fairly big blockbuster movie. And, for families who have kids who would want to see this movie, you're essentially saving a big bundle on movie theater tickets and concession costs.
You're saving tons of money at that point.
Yeah.
So much money.
So much money. The other problem is that, but the on the flip side of that is the question of, can anybody actually afford that, $29.99 charge on top of bills, on top of the charge already for Disney Plus.
Right.
So it's just like, I understand where Disney's coming from. It's both a purely business choice, and it's also just like, we're trying to do the best we can considering how much money we've lost this year.
Yeah.
Which is like, the estimate is about like $3.5 billion, which is fucking nuts.
It's crazy amount.
And more money than either of us will ever see in our life.
Oh, for sure. Also, fun fact. So Mulan being dropped around like the beginning of September or so, allegedly, right? Because we're not 100% sure. But also at the beginning of September, my wife and I will be together as a couple for 13 years.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, September
crazy kid.
September 1st, 2006 is when we first started as a couple. So this is not our marriage anniversary, but it is our unification anniversary, if you will. So
your meet cute anniversary, as it was.
There you go. I don't know what that word is, but it sounds right.
it's just that, a meet cute is like is a term just to describe that moment where a couple meets each other for the first time and the sparks are lit.
But it also sounds like you said meat cube, and so I was very confused. I pictured like the Borg cube, but just of like ground beef flying.
Well, let's be honest, Anthony. Meat? No, wait. Fuck. I fucked up my joke.
God. Cut. Edit point.
Cut it. No, we're leaving it in. Fuck it. We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. Okay.
Well, Anthony, resistance is futile. Resistance is futile.
Oh.
As is love.
Oh.
Wait, that sounds a lot more cynical than I expected it to be.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me.
Don't hurt me.
No more.
What is love?
The YouTube is gonna just hate this episode.
Not really. I don't know. I think we're off key enough. And plus, you put some wonderful new titles and ending credits for our last episode that were very anime.
Do you like that?
I loved that so much.
I heard you you texted me about the first part, the intro, but the outro. Tell me.
Oh my God. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who did listen. But for those of you who haven't, Anthony decided to be cheeky and put in a anime style opening and soft song closing, because that's what anime does. They have at least action anime like My Hero Academia does. The hard heavy get you pumped intro song, and then the soft love ballad outro song. Anthony in his gloriousness decided to do that for our episode, and I love him for it. That's why we're best friends, to be quite honest. It's just the little things like that.
Honestly, it was just little things. I was editing it, I was chopping it up, and I was like, look, we're doing an anime episode. I got to find some sort of royalty-free anime intro and outro. I have to. And so it all came together magically, believe it or not, by the power of the internet.
Which I am ever grateful for, and I hope that we never find out what is actually being sung, because if it's just like some weird fucked up shit.
That was one of the things I thought about. Like, what if they're talking about just like taking dicks and all their orifices and stuff?
Well, I mean, it's all.
Well, that's kind of on brand at that point, right?
I know it is on brand. We don't give a shit. Everybody's welcome here. Oh God. Wow, this is already turning out to be completely fucking wild. Didn't help that you ambushed me with the we're recording already.
Oh, I know, but that's when you get the best intros, man.
Yeah, I know. Oh,
speaking of getting ambushed, I was ambushed by the sudden need to play Madden NFL 2020. So God, what a great transition, man.
Transition. We're good at transitions. Wait. Since you brought up Madden, what would John Madden sound like on the Ludic Lounge cast?
Oh, God. I'm here on the Ludic Lounge cast. Brett Favre. Brett Favre is the best quarterback I've ever seen in his entire life. And yes, I know I sound drunk right now, but that's just because I'm so high on being Ludic Lounge cast with Johnny Colombo.
Johnny Madden, it's good to see you up here. Up in the booth again. You smell a little bit. It probably doesn't help that you were a decomposing corpse.
Who is only living via his video game franchise, which has been stale for the past 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, that probably doesn't help with the kids who probably don't know who John Madden is.
No, not at all. But what I will say about Madden 2020 is that, again, it's got one of the most fluid, I almost said combat styles, but I guess it's not combat. It's got a fluid game engine. It's using the Frostbite, which has its moments of being shitty, but it has its moments of greatness.
That's the downside of EA. They kind of force everything onto Frostbite.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that, not just myself, but a lot of the fans of Madden on the Reddit page, which I'm a part of, that they're complaining about is the franchise mode. Now, the funny part is that Madden, and I'm going to take it, so have a seat here, kids. I'm going to take you back some years. So Madden 2004, originally released on the Nintendo GameCube, the original Microsoft Xbox, and the PlayStation 2, if you can believe it. They were released then, and they had a very in-depth franchise mode. And by very in-depth, you were able to pick not only a head coach, but you're also able to pick your assistant coach, like your offensive coaches, your defensive coaches, your special team coaches, and those coaches that you hired for those positions would influence literally every position possible. So, for example, Tom Rathman, who was a 49er legend, 49er great at running back for them, he was in Madden 2004, and you can hire him as an offensive coordinator. Now, by hiring him, you would get a running back boost. So they would get boosted strength, boosted athleticism, whatever have you.
Like video game steroids?
Yeah, essentially. They would boost the stats. Yeah, they would boost the stats of whatever offensive position. And defense would do the same thing. Special teams would do the same thing. And as the series progressed, 2005 is probably the highlight, many would argue, and I would argue for, because it introduced the hit stick, which would murder people. And again, after the mid 2000s, once it got to 2010, 2011, and past the 2010s, essentially, it went such downhill, and they scraped the franchise mode, just completely butchered the damn thing, and more in favor for online play. Now you're saying, okay, well, online play must not be a bad thing. You're going to be playing competitively against many people online, etc. Well, here's the thing, folks. EA, what they do is it's essentially like a card game thing where you try to purchase packs of cards, which would give you players. And, the more you spend, the more packs you get, or the more legendary packs you would get, so that way you'd boost your team. So what's that called, kids?
Pay for play.
Pay for play. Bingo. Give
Premium,
that man a prize.
Just so it sounds like everything, EA has done when it comes to online games, where it's just like, you can grind all you want, but if you pay us a little bit of money to get, those packs, we'll give you the good shit.
Yeah, and again, this isn't to shit on EA, because MLB The Show does the same thing. NBA 2K does the same thing as far as like on their online play and packs, etc. So it's not like a new thing, but it's just a shitty thing that they would gut out their franchise mode, which had
in favor of that.
Yeah, which had a lot of great moments of, again, all the strategy to put in place, all the scouting you could do for new players. The fact that, back then they were actually NCAA football games, so you could literally play an NCAA season, put those senior players or junior players, whatever have you, into a draft class, and then switch over to your Madden game, and then literally download that draft class that you just got through playing on NCAA, which is a fucking cool thing in itself. Not only that, but you could actually, and I remember this from my OG Xbox, you could put in your own music that way you wouldn't have to hear the shitty soundtracks of today's soundtracks. Now again,
whatever shitty soundtrack that they licensed for that year.
Yeah, exactly. Madden 04, 05 fucking slaps. Like, they had a lot of great songs. Like, they had American Idiot. They had The Hive's Hate to Say I Told You So. They had Bone Crusher on there. Like, they had some good tracks, so I'm not bashing on that. But nowadays, like, I'm listening to this Madden 20 soundtrack, and the only artist I know is Snoop Dogg, but it's like this shitty, not any of his hits. It's like a Madden feature song, and it's just garbage. And all the songs on there are just like, now that's what I call easily licensed music, 19.
Or this is a paycheck rap song.
Yeah,
because Snoop doesn't give a damn about
now,
doing something specific for Madden.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas, and you think, okay, well, it's just a sign of the times. That's the way it goes. No, MLB The Show, John, I'll let you know. They let you, on your PlayStation 4, get a USB drive, put music on said USB drive, and download the music into the game. So I'm sitting here playing, when I play MLB The Show, I'm listening to, anywhere from Styx to Ludacris to, The Killers, and all the way to Frank Sinatra.
The good shit.
Yeah, and I'm listening to good shit, and it's actually hits. And you're like, okay, this is wonderful. So what I'm saying, John, and our loyal listeners at home, is EA, get your shit together. Give me a good franchise mode, which they said they're going to do for not this upcoming year, but the year after, which I highly fucking doubt. And that's all I have to say about that.
In other words, listen to the old ass men of the internet.
Yeah.
Because let's be frank. I mean, it's so much different than when we were as kids. And you're right. Like, I was never really a big sports guy, but like when we were younger, like up to like 2010, the early 2000s, it's like the sport Madden especially was like a big event game. It felt like it was always like the thing that a lot of those, that particular brand of fan, but just like some video gamers in general would just be like, we are excited for Madden because it is fun to play.
Yeah. And the thing
that way you get football all around.
Yeah. And the thing about that, John, is that it's not just slap a new roster onto it. Let's slap a new coat of paint. They actually had like major upgrades to the game. For example, Madden 2004 to 2005 implemented the hit stick on defense, which literally would murder people. And again, they just and then the year after that, Madden 06, they added a career mode essentially for where you could take the place of one player instead of doing a team. And again, they added, they had the hit stick on defense, but for the offense, they had what they called the truck stick, which was like, I'm going to truck all these defenders so I can put some punishment back. So little by little, in the early 2000s, they would add all of these significant upgrades. But nowadays, like I was just arguing about, and I know loyal listeners, a lot of this is old man yells at cloud, so I get it. But a lot of it is literally just slapping. Yeah, a lot of it's just slapping a new coat of paint and going, okay, there you go, same old shit, just with a new coat of paint, folks.
Enjoy. Yeah, we'll still charge you like $60 for all this.
Well, 70.
You know what I always. Well, I mean that's we can like pivot a little bit to that. I mean, there was a. Have we talked about this on air? About the
boy,
I know we talked about it personally.
I know we talked about it personally. Well, I think we're going to re-talk about
I'll just
we'll rediscuss it. Yeah.
Fuck it, we'll do it live. There was a rumor going around with the next generation, with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox, whatever the fuck they're calling it.
Series X.
Whatever. Nobody's going to call it that. Just call it Xbox
2.
Seriously, just
Xbox 2.
or whatever. 3.0, 4.0, whatever. Just everyone's just going to call it an Xbox. You know, it doesn't matter what stupid name that they append to it.
And by the way, it's no longer a rumor; like it is confirmed that they're going to be doing with the update. Yeah.
So for the longest time, going from when Anthony and I were youngins, most video games cost about $60. More about like $65 after tax, but I mean that's at least what it is in California.
Yeah, exactly.
But for this next generation, it's looking more likely that it's going to be up to $70. So you're paying more for I guess the technology of it, since now it's getting to the point where I suppose you're basically paying for a souped up gaming computer, even though the gaming computers are a lot more expensive and more powerful than the consoles could ever be. But
not only that, John, it's the cost of $60 video game is to the point where it's been $60 since literally we're talking the OG Xbox, even probably before that, like you're talking Nintendo 64 days, early PlayStation days. So as technology has advanced and as AAA studios, minor studios, they're bringing in more people, the costs of making these video games have increased, tenfold.
Exponentially, one could say. And if you pay enough attention, you hear enough stories about how difficult this has gotten for a lot of these development teams. Naughty Dog has been in the news, not favorably, because of Last of Us 2, where they were really pushing their team very hard past what they call crunch.
And it's not just Naughty Dog; it's literally the video game world. If you start to peel the layers and look and shine a flashlight into this, it is one ugly beast of a fucking thing.
It's filled with roaches. I was just reading a story about Blizzard.
Oh God, boy,
that's an absolute shit show. I mean, consider the article started, and I might have redirected myself to another article where I read like two. I think that one was about how Blizzard and their female characters tend to often be put into weird villain positions, where it's just they're being kind of demonized for having some kind of power. It's a lot more complicated than that. I would encourage everybody to go out and find that article. And the other one is that there's a gross pay disparity between the executives and the higher ups at Blizzard versus the people who are doing the hard grunt work.
Oh yeah, huge disparages.
Huge, absolutely. So it's if you look hard enough, it's just you see the cracks and the roaches digging through. But I mean, my hope is that even though these games are going to get charged more, that maybe that leads to some kind of increased compensation for those folks who are doing all the hard work. But I mean, I'm a cynical bastard, so I doubt it.
It's to the point, John, and again, like we're not in the industry, so we don't know everything firsthand. No. But from podcasts, interviews I've heard of people who work on the games, it's literally like sweatshop hours. Like these people are working close to 20-hour days for pay that is probably more than I make right now working retail, but is probably a whole hell of a lot less than what somebody like an engineer or anyone, a sound engineer or anyone else in the entertainment industry is making. And not only that, but
Like-
one thing. Oh, go ahead, John.
No, I heard I read a tweet from somebody, and I wish I could find it because I just saw it in passing, but it kind of blew my mind. They had worked for and are still working for Nintendo, and said, they tried to poach me for less than I make it currently at Nintendo, and I know all these stories about people who are living in their cars in the Blizzard parking lot because they are not paid enough. And you guys think, prestige is enough to get me over? Fuck you.
Yeah, and it's not only that, but even how media outlets cover games, they have to be very careful because essentially it's a racket. Like if you try to go into it as a pure journalist and say like, no, this game is garbage because of X, because of Y, because of Z, these media outlets won't invite you back to a future E3 or a future whatever con. And so these journalists have to walk this tightrope of saying, well, no, this part they need to, let's say, work on and do maybe a patch to, but the game is great, everything's wonderful, which is why, honestly, nowadays, if you really pay attention to game ratings from like IGN or any other independent one, you rarely see anything under a 3. Everything is at least a 3 or higher on a scale of 5.
And it's interesting that you mentioned IGN because former IGN team member, and I believe she was a writer, Alana Pierce, did some YouTube videos on her channel that talked about how IGN scores. And I would, encourage everybody to kind of check that out because, she breaks it down very interestingly. And it's, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but, she lays it all out. And she was somebody who was on the inside, so I would trust her judgment.
Oh yeah,
without any kind of hesitation.
Yeah, and again, we're not trying to sit here and vilify the journalists. If anything, we're vilifying the actual corporations because, again, just having the tightrope that these journalists and other people who do the reviews and the critiques and stuff have to walk. Even the game guys.
Honestly, fuck those fucking corporations.
Yeah, seriously, eat the fucking.
They ain't paying us shit.
No, they're not. But, you don't want to burn bridges or potential bridges.
Fuck that.
Fair enough. But, John, I'm hoping one day we can just sell out. That's my ultimate goal is that we get bought out for like $1 million cool bucks, and then we can just sell out and just do what other major podcasts do and drop fucking commercials every 5 seconds.
I mean, I'll hold out for more than $1 million. This Peter Falk impression's worth more than that, and as far as I'm concerned.
Oh hell yeah! That's when you get paid out of this podcast, and then you actually do bigger and better things.
And then I'm in Vegas, you motherfuckers.
So, John, speaking of your Columbo impression.
Yes, that's right. You're going to be hearing a lot more of this, ladies and gentlemen.
But
if I do say so myself.
What do you mean by that?
What do I mean? Am I going to stay in character for this whole announcement? I think so. No, I'm not. Before we pivot back into our general conversation, Anthony and I have decided we are going to launch a brand new podcast that is in addition to the Ludic Lounge cast. It will not be a sub podcast like Ludic Lives is. Anthony and I are proud to unveil the Columbo Files.
Dun,
Now,
dun, dun!
Thank you, Anthony, for the dramatic touch. For those of you who are unaware, Columbo was a detective show that ran from the late 60s to about 2003. And they were a series of almost movie-style detective stories starring legendary TV and film actor Peter Falk and numerous guest stars. Sorry?
I said rest in peace.
Rest in peace. He was a fine man. So I discovered this show, and I think if I remember the story correctly, one of my favorite comics in the early 2010s was a comic called Hawkeye, and part of it,
yes, bitch,
part of Hawkeye. This is the Matt Fraction David Aja run. It is
give them their fucking due because it's my one of my favorite, not just Hawkeye runs, but just comic runs in general.
Yeah, honestly, everything that Marvel has done is kind of, from when that comic released on, has kind of been like a riff on that, dialing in specifically on a character with a fixed writer artist team, almost to the point where they're kind of inseparable.
All right, so look, folks, I know I'm going to derail this for a minute, John. This is your boy Antonicus talking. I don't read many comics. I don't. That's just a plain fact. I don't read many comics. I haven't read nearly a fraction of what our boy John has. But one thing I will say to you is that if you don't go out there and read the Hawkeye Run by Matt Fraction, I will literally punch you in the face. I will punch you square in the face through the medium of podcast. I will just smack you. And you know what? It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, creed, credo, nothing. Because the hammers of justice are unisex.
Way to bring in Batman.
No, not just Batman. Batman Brave and the Bold.
I know, but I'm trying to take the plane back, motherfucker.
No, I'm trying to threaten our audience, all three of them, that they need to read, which they probably have read at this point, but they need to read that. They need to read that run. Because if I read it and loved it as much as they do, motherfucker, that's a stamp of approval right there.
That is absolutely true. And one of the things about that Hawkeye run is that there's a part of it where it focuses on the other Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, in her new kind of experiences as a private eye in Los Angeles. And the Matt Fraction, the writer, had frequently said it's essentially his riff on the Rockford Files and Raymond Chandler, specifically the Eli Gould Long Goodbye movie. And I think through that, I discovered Rockford Files, and then through Rockford Files, I discovered Columbo. And what Anthony and I are planning to do with the Columbo Files, because as with everything in my life, I gave the show to Anthony and he fell in love. Plus, I developed a pretty decent Peter Falk by listening to him in the show and other people who do Peter Falk impressions, I should say. We both fell in love with the show, and we decided we are going to go through all 69 episodes of Columbo.
Nice.
Thank you, Anthony. We're going to be working on those pretty soon. We have a pretty strict structure on how we plan to break down those episodes. But be on the lookout for that in the near future, probably, hopefully in like 2 weeks or so, depending on how long it takes us to process this shit.
Yeah, it's right now it's a to be determined as far as a release date. Because we have to cut time to watch it. And then not only, so what we do here at Ludic Lounge Cast is we just I'm going to just plain out say it, we fuck around a lot here. Minus the one we did last week, the round table, which was actually structured. We actually had points. It's going to feel a lot like that. We're going to actually come in here with notes. We're going to actually come in here with thoughts. I mean, there's going to still be some laughing, some good times, but it's going to be more of a critique, structured thing, kind of like Ludic Lives or what we did as far as our Ludic round table. So not to say it's not going to be fun and games. It's still going to be me. It's still going to be John. It's still going to be something we fucking love. And maybe even some guest appearances.
And Peter Falk.
And mainly John's Peter Falk impression.
Hey, that's right, ladies and gentlemen.
Until
that's right. And
the episodes with Shatner. And then I can unleash my Shatner, which sounds a lot like my Christopher Walken. Believe it or not. Yes, tickle me.
Hello.
Just tickle me.
Am I to understand that's your Christopher Walken? You dumb son of a bitch. That's my voice that you're stealing there. How dare you? This is still a bad Peter Walken. Peter Walken. Can I combine those impressions? I don't know.
No, that's what the character's name is. It's Peter Walken. You have Johnny Columbo when you do Columbo, and it's Peter Walken.
Hello. This is Peter Walken. That doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work.
But my Shatner, it worked. And I am on Columbo twice. One time I make fun of Rush Limbaugh.
Oh, that's
it's
right.
Great. I know.
Right. I forgot about that.
it's gonna get weird. We're gonna try and bring in as much trivia and information as we can get. There will be plenty of Peter Falk jokes, plenty of Johnny Colombo jokes. Peter Walken might show up. I don't know. But it's a new thing that we're excited about, and we're just we'll keep an eye out on our socials, and we'll let everybody know when it's out there for your listening pleasure.
Oh, and
so if you ever had a
socials, speaking of socials that you need to watch out for, what I'm going to do right now, as John filibusters for me so eloquently, or actually I'm filibustering for myself technically, I'm going to give you, folks, this is what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you the gift of our socials now, just because we mentioned it, and we're such we do such great work as far as our segues. So
that way we don't forget to do it at the end of the show.
Yeah, we're pretty bad at that. So the Ludic Lounge, you can reach us on Twitter at Ludic Lounge. For myself, Antonicus, at Rojo Loco 44, no spaces. And for yours truly, John, at just_John_0891. Or, of course,
please feel free to email at us. Email us? I don't know. I couldn't talk. I was being possessed by a spirit. Please feel free to email us at theludiclounge@gmail.com.
No spaces.
No spaces.
No emails from our loyal listeners. Come on, two of you people.
I was expecting you to jump into a Michael Jackson song for some reason. Like, no spaces. Yeah. Like, for some reason, it just sparked a memory of a Michael Jackson lyric from, like, Black and White in my head. This is my curse for being the son of a DJ. I have
John, the only Michael Jackson I know is literally from the Thriller album, and maybe that's
Off the Wall is such a great fucking song though.
And whatever track, Smooth Criminal, whatever album that came from, because I on top of my
head. Is it Thriller?
No, it wasn't on Thriller. No, it was after Thriller.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I don't fucking remember. They all kind of blur together for me, to be quite honest. But that's neither there.
That's kind of fair. The 80s kind of belong to Michael Jackson in general, so.
And cocaine.
And so much cocaine. So much cocaine.
I did all the cocaine. I don't know. Don't sue me, Arnold.
Oh, God. He's, of all the people we made fun of, he's probably the most litigious out of all of them.
Probably. Anyway.
So speaking of litigation, John, our lawyer buddy here, what have you been watching and or playing? Segues. We're such good at segues and transitions.
I know, and not awkward pauses because John can't figure out how to transition.
That's okay. I'm going to cut it up. It'll be nice and fucking smooth.
That is. Yeah. And you'll just keep that joke in, and then everybody will just be like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Game-wise... that's been taking up most of my time because and this is just this isn't going to be me doing a more Final Fantasy VII talk, but my statement from last week still kind of rings true. It's still kind of living in my head, mostly just because I'm really kind of in love with the story of the characters, and part of it is just because the game has been out, for like 20 plus years. So, what the arcs might be based off of what the previous game was. So part of my fascination is based off of that and seeing, the culmination of where the story you get given in the remake is probably going to go. So it's just like, I'm just so enamored and excited by, those stories, so it just kind of lingers, and it's I feel like in part it's impacted my enjoyment of the game I'm currently knee deep in, Ghost of Tsushima, because I feel that, and I alluded to this topic earlier this week when I was talking to Anthony off mic, about my feeling about open world third person action games, which Ghost of Tsushima falls in, along with stuff like, Assassin's Creed or the Uncharted's and your Far Cry's and so on. it's like, at least so far in Ghost of Tsushima, with a few exceptions, the characters haven't really sparked me in a way that I feel like I've gotten with Final Fantasy, which it got me thinking about, how AAA games like Ghost of Tsushima, like Assassin's Creed, kind of put the emphasis on the gameplay, which, I mean, you have to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only reason people play it, is if it's fun to fucking play. And it got me thinking about, the one time in Assassin's Creed where I think people actually got attached to the character, which is with Ezio, and I read, I think, a Kotaku article that, talked about people's attachment to him. And, they brought up the fact that you literally see him born. You start with him as an infant and you go till he dies. You literally see his entire life.
Yep.
And that's something that I don't know if AAA games will ever get the ability to do again. I mean, I think the other exception to that, I think, is like God of War, where, I mean, you have, I mean, to a degree. I mean, Kratos in the first, era of that game, where it is all just that era of Kratos, where it is just like all kind of arch and very melodramatic,
a lot
angry.
Of sex mini games. So many sex mini games.
Yeah, and then you compare it to where we find him in that, in God of War for the PlayStation 4. And he is very much, a restrained man who is dealing with, how do I help my son who is dealing with that same kind of anger, but also dealing with it in a different way than I ever did.
Yeah.
And dealing with it in similar ways that I did. So I think, with
boy.
Boy.
That was my Kratos impression. Boy. Pretty much.
Boy, bring me that axe. Boy.
He said axe. He said axe, folks. AXE.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if that came out unclear. I think Kratos is an exception just because, you have that history with him indirectly. Just because, he's been around in the gaming world for so long.
Yeah.
To bring it back to Ghost of Tsushima, it's just like, with the protagonist, I get Jin's need for revenge. I mean, the opening of that game is brutal for him. It's absolutely brutal.
And I'm glad you mentioned that you see the need for Jin and his revenge, because the only thing I typically see when it comes to Jin is gin and tonic.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
No.
But I understand your
confusion.
I knew it was coming.
And then also, so before you jump fully deep into Ghost of Tsushima, does it kind of linger in your mind that you say Final Fantasy VII does? And if so, do you have to let it linger? Yeah, I just made a Cranberries reference that only John and two other people will understand. Do you have to let it linger?
Wow, buddy. I'm impressed by your dedication to the deep cut puns.
Hey, that was a good one, man. That was a deep cut. Cranberries, who would have thought, man?
I mean, I sure as hell didn't. Maybe some of our listeners might have, but I mean, I sure as hell didn't see that coming. But to answer your question, it lingers in a different way, because
literally the question was just a setup for the pun, by the way.
I understand, but it also is moving the conversation forward, so it still works. The things that linger for Tsushima that are there are substantially different than what it is from, at least what I'm lingering on for Final Fantasy VII. Like for Final Fantasy, it's more about the personal relationships rather than the overall kind of message, I guess. Because I feel, I know that at the end of the day with Final Fantasy, I know that at some point they're going to prevail. It's just, what are they going to lose along the way? and how does that change them as people? And like, and for instance, like Cloud and Tifa, it's just like, I'm like, I want to see those two kind of prevail that over that shared trauma that they have, and find their way to each other more so than they already have. I mean, I think they're there, but it's just like there's a lot more complicated history and circumstances in the way of what works for them, both individually and as a prospective couple,
or throuple.
Yeah, and that's also there too, because it's just like, it's not necessarily fair to between Cloud and Aerith, because it's just like it's loving a ghost. It's just like whatever of Zack is in him is just a figment, and it's not fair to Aerith's relationship with Zack to jump on that, and it's not fair to Cloud because it's only things that he's pretending to be that are catching her attention. It doesn't seem like it's him, and I don't necessarily think that it's completely fair to either of them to put that kind of obligation onto each other. And with Tsushima, it's a little bit broader, because I feel like I can tell, if you ask me where I think the game is going to end up based on everything I've seen so far, because I've only gotten through the first act. It's a big game. And I can get more into like the minutia of how the game works and plays, because it is a fun game. Don't let anything I'm saying, take that away. It is an absolutely fun game. It is an absolutely gorgeous game, but it's dealing with the tried and true question of what is honorable acts. What is it to be honorable? What is it to be good? How do you do good? And it's putting that up against traditional samurai culture and bushido. It's just like samurai are in control of themselves. They don't let emotion rule them. They don't they don't act from the shadows. They take it face on and address it from there. So there's no morality system like a Mass Effect, but it is pushing that question onto you. It's like, well, how do you want to do it? Do you want to be sneaky, or do you want to just be straightforward about this?
So one thing, again, I know you're into it, but I haven't
Mm-hmm.
played it. And one of the things I'd be interested into looking into is if you do choose the more like ninja approach, the more assassin, the more, going against the Bushido code, does it look something more of like, does Jin grappling with the fact like, look, I have to do this for the greater good? You know what I mean?
Well,
like, ultimately, I'm trying to drive these people off of this land, so I'm using these tactics for the greater good. So does he justify that within himself, or does he beat himself up because of that? You know what I mean?
honestly, like based on what I've seen so far, is that he did that at first. Like from the onset, post the defeat at Komoda Beach, where the game takes place and then sets up the larger game. He feels guilt for surviving, because it's like an honorable death is a death in battle. And then it becomes, well, now I survived. I must have survived for a reason. My reason is I have to save my uncle and save this island, my home. And it becomes, well, I have to do that by any means necessary now, because what worked before is not working now. That's where I think that's where his decision making came from. From his conduct, he thinks that is an honorable decision. Yeah. It is fudging the line a lot, and he knows that. But I think he has come to the decision that this was the thing I needed to do in order to keep myself alive and to keep myself in the position to keep doing something to ultimately drive out this invading force. So I think from that perspective, at least from dealing with Jin and how he is processing it, I think that's a tried and true kind of theme in my opinion. The whole, am I doing these horrible things for the right reasons, or am I just doing it because I enjoy it? That's that's the question being posed to him by others. Usually the members of the ruling class, other samurai, themselves and their family, saying what you're doing is not necessarily what our culture says is okay. So I'm foreseeing a potential conflict within Jin's own circle. I'm not 100% sure if that's going to be the case, but I feel like that it's pushing that conflict together, between what's traditional in Japan at that time versus what Jin is feeling he has to do because he knows he needs to. This is what the situation is calling for.
Yeah. So kind of it is a little bit of a transition, is a little bit of a.
I mean, I think not to ruin the transition, but I think to put it back onto the point I was trying to make about AAA games is that how often do we get these kind of deep thoughts about it? I mean, I think in the conversation we just had, I've turned a little bit around on Tsushima, so there's a little bit more to it, but and there's another thing about Tsushima that a quiet moment that I wanted to bring up. There's a character named Lady Masako Adachi, who is the wife of one of the clan leaders who was killed, and she lost everybody. Her whole family, her sons, her daughters-in-laws, her grandchildren, all killed by the Mongols.
Yeah.
And she's the only survivor. And, you're helping her, find her family's killers. Because if I recall correctly, there was a betrayal internally that led to a lot of their deaths. At least for the women and the children, not necessarily the men, because the men died in battle.
Right.
But there's a moment where you sit with her, and she says, this is where I would sit with my grandchildren, and it's too quiet. There was always music, and you have the ability to play the flute. Jin can play. If you swipe on the pad, you can play a song on the flute, and the game. And I was thinking I should do that, and then the game prompted me to do that, so the game read my mind.
Yeah,
it was just like this quiet, tender moment, just giving this woman some peace, even though she's never going to have peace again. That I think that moved me more than the dilemma that Jin is having between what exactly is honorable, because it was just this moment of kindness, just to. This woman has lost everything, and the least I can do is this. And I thought that was a very strong character moment, at least between the two, at least on Jin's side, because I think that shows that he's thoughtful for the people around him, and to bring it to my larger point about AAA games, it's just I don't think you get moments like that, these quiet moments. Like I think back a lot to a lot of the post Ezio games in Assassin's Creed, where you just jump from protagonist to protagonist to protagonist, and every single game it's different, just because they need to innovate instead of just build up a story. And like I can't think of a single moment, even in Ezio's story, where there's that kind of quiet tenderness. And like the other one that popped in my mind when I was thinking of it, when I was talking to you about it, Anthony, was that Mad Max game. Even though I didn't play very much of it, mostly because it just felt, and part of this might be just because it's Mad Max, but it felt soulless. Like it felt just barren and soulless, and just like just a horrible endeavor. Not to say that game is horrible or bad. I'm indifferent either way, but it's just like
it's the overall premise of it, right?
The less premise, more atmosphere.
Yeah, sorry, that's kind of what I was shooting for.
Yeah, so
it's desolation over.
Yeah, and like maybe that's just the changing nature of my taste, but like I feel like so many like I want that emotional beat. I want that quiet moment where it is just somebody showed somebody just a quantum of solace, an ounce of empathy and kindness.
Yeah.
And I think that, my opinion, I think Tsushima is going to become a thing that I refer to a little bit repeatedly on the podcast for a while because A, the game is just big. And B, I'm curious to see how it stacks, how my opinion keeps changing. If there are more moments like that where it is, drilling down into quiet character moments and quiet kindnesses, rather than big kind of giant spectacle. Because like, I think like you have, on the flip side, you have something like Uncharted, which is all about character, right? Supposedly, and something like Last of Us, which is all about character.
Yeah, but even in those games, like what Naughty Dog does do well, I would argue, is that they do have those quiet moments. Now you have a giant explosion right after, or like in the middle of it. But like I can think of Uncharted, like when you're solving a puzzle or something like that, you have once you figure out the puzzle, and they have like a small arc of I can't remember which game, but it's like, oh yeah, I can't remember what Nate would say, but it's like, oh yeah, this person would be proud of me finding this at this time.
Yeah, or there's a witty repartee that is absolutely reflective of the characters between like Nate and Sully, or Chloe and Nate, or Elena, or whoever.
Yeah.
And Last of Us does that too. I mean, I haven't gotten to the second Last of Us, so I can't really comment on that, but I can only really comment on like the wider opinion of, they are forcing you to kind of contemplate what it means to be doing this amount of violence and what it costs. And I mean, like Last of Us the end of that first Last of Us has one of the most complicated character-based endings I think I've ever encountered, which you hated until I explained to you what I was seeing in the internal character discussion. And I'm curious to see how it translates into the sequel.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that, hearkening on Last of Us, I actually re-downloaded the first Last of Us onto my PlayStation 4 in hopes that one day I'm going to go back to it with my older, wiser viewpoints now and kind of see how it changes for me, especially the ending, how everything hits differently. Because I remember that conversation we had, and again, when you brought your perspective into it, it's like, oh, I never even thought about that, or oh, I didn't even consider X, Y, or Z. And again, I'm speaking in broader terms, so we don't necessarily spoil it.
I mean, we can get into it, but I mean that's...
no, it's not needed right now, especially because I haven't literally played the game in 5 years or so. No,
it's worth doing having that conversation again once we both of us have gone through the game.
Oh, for sure.
Because I feel like I need to go through that the first Last of Us before I get to part 2, just because my memory, like yours, is so fuzzy. But I mean, I think everything that I'm talking about is reflective of how games have changed so much. I mean, you go from, like, I'm only going to use this example because it's just what popped in my head. Like Zelda, you have the basic premise of you have to save the princess and save the world.
Sure.
To you have to do all of that, but there is you get to understand how your player character and the characters around you work, and you're going to lose some things along the way, and how does that you're going to see how it impacts everybody.
Yeah. And that's why, like, when you're talking about the overall premise, that's why, honestly, the Mass Effect trilogy, the Mass Effect series as a whole hits. Because I'm thinking, when you were talking about those little moments, those quiet moments, I was hearkening back to, those little moments with Liara in Mass Effect 3 when, like, shit's just getting blown up. Or, like, the little moment with Garrus that you have. Just those little moments of respite before you're literally thrown back in the front lines of Reapers literally just decimating everything and anything.
And you're also kind of, I think you're also reinforcing the point that I'm making, is that the games need to take time. And I think you only get something like an Ezio as a character, or Mass Effect, by spreading it across multiple games. Like Master Chief doesn't have, as far as I'm concerned, the complexity of an Ezio or a Shepard.
Not the complexity, but there are moments of complex feelings and such, especially when it comes to his relationship with Cortana.
Yeah, but and I am very hazy on what's like. I'm going back to like Halo 3. I have no idea what's the fuck has happened since that.
Yeah, but, I mean that's totally fair, and a lot of those storylines, like I played all the way up until 5, but the stories just kind of blend, honestly.
Yeah, I mean and like we're just like, I think what we're trying to get at is that we want to just dissect and digest the complexities that these games tend to have.
Yeah.
And how that kind of gets frustrated by the machine. I mean, something like, EA at the end of the day is just, they want money. Let's cut out the bullshit right there. A lot of the backing behind these game companies, are big corporations who care less about the meaning and more about, is this moving units?
Yeah.
You only move units if you have that. I think you only move units if you have that ability to reel people in. I think you're always going to reel people in, but the more cookie cutter you are about it, the less of a result I think you're going to have.
Yeah. And you can make the argument that it's not just EA, right? You can talk about any major corporation, but the one thing I would do to challenge that premise that you just mentioned is, and what I'm loving and seeing flourish, is little studios like Laren Studio, which did the Divinity series. They're coming into their own as, they weren't considered a AAA at all, but they're coming up in their own with the time that they're taking, their dedication to their craft, their lore building, their world building, to the point now where they're taking on the third Baldur's Gate. Like, they've just gained so much renown and just so much respect from the gaming community because, again, I can't speak to how they're treating their employees, but the way they're treating their consumers, it's not just pumping out like, okay, I need to sell 1 billion units or else it's a complete bust and we lose money. They're taking their time. They're taking real seriousness about their craft. And again, you can make the same argument from CD Red, although again, I'm not going to argue about the way they treat their employees because they have some shady shit that's been coming to light in regards to that. But again, same thing, the same premise, small studio, started building up, and then Witcher 3 was their catalyst essentially to this bigger realm to where they can do a project, of Cyberpunk now that's been delayed, but again, just because they're respecting their craft and they want to make sure you don't get a half-ass thing that has to have 17 DLC patches day one. Yeah,
but I also think that CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk is a perfect example of what happens when that pressure gets put on you. Because
that's fair.
I think like with Cyberpunk, they've repeatedly said that they're not aiming for it to be, any kind of political kind of statement. When you look at Cyberpunk as a genre, that's all it's about,
political statement.
Yeah, that's all it's ever been. It's not about the atmosphere. It's about the point. It's about the message.
Yeah.
And the message is that our society is fucked up.
Yeah.
And that's a gross simplification.
Oh yeah, totally. But the overall arching generalization of the genre, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that they're only saying that it's not political is because they want to move the fucking units.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's just that's the bar. It is, honestly, whomever is distributing the game is just like, we need you guys to hit every single corner of this market. Will you guys do it?
Honestly, it's what Michael Jordan did to sell his shoes. That joke he made to a reporter. Even Republicans buy sneakers too. And it's
fucked up quote, but it's true.
But it's true. I mean, that's why for the longest time he wasn't as political as he could have been, and you can make the argument for should have been. Because Republicans buy sneakers too.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the dollar moves things. Man, having to have a one talk about AAA games turned into a whole thing, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're sitting at about almost 90 minutes now, but to close out, John, one of the things I really wanted to talk about, and it's a conversation we graced upon, or Graced. That's not the right verbiage. Let me try that
Grazed.
again. Grazed. There we go. That's what I was searching for. And I've come to this, and again, you helped me realize that I'm not the only one, which is huge in many aspects. But I've come to the point now where I feel dissatisfied or I'm searching for something to play.
Right.
And we had this conversation, literally, I think it was yesterday or the day before.
Yeah. Yeah. This week at least.
At least. And it got to the point where I was like, I'm searching for something and I don't know what I'm searching for. And then, you and I were teasing that idea. And again, we talked about, is this something that stems from just like boredom with what's out there nowadays, which is kind of crap because there are so many games to play right now.
I know. Yeah.
Or is it something more so? And again, I don't have an answer to this, mind you. And loyal listeners, I'm bringing this up to maybe make you think about this, and maybe we can have a greater conversation about it via our social media that we just plugged and so on and so forth. But I don't know if it's just something, because again, I've been pretty open about my mental health battles and stuff like that. I mean, I've been dealing with depression since a long while. I can't even give you an amount of years. So I don't know if it's something that stems from that, because again, some of the results from that mental illness is that, boredom or lack of interest of things you once loved.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sitting here searching, and again, you tease it out, is that it's just a bigger question that I want to have a conversation about.
Okay.
And I want to kind of keep thinking on this, and I don't know what I want to do with this. I'd ultimately like you and I and maybe some other people we bring on in via social media. Maybe we even do just a strict podcast about this topic, because I think there's something here and there's something worth discovering. I just don't know how to shape it because I'm inside of my head too much. You know what I mean?
I think, yeah, no, I get it. I think part of, because I've had this question myself. I deal with a lot of the same kind of issues that you brought up. And I think part of it, and this is just my perspective. So take from it what you will. I mean, we came up from, hard, I think our hardest gaming years were probably our teens, right?
Definitely.
Where you had your three, the boom of the Xbox and PlayStation evolving from 3 to 4 and now 5.
Yeah, you can make the argument from like freshman year, maybe 8th grade to freshman year to like, our early 20s essentially.
Yeah. So I mean, like, we've seen the medium evolve and take giant leaps, over now what, like, I think this is the 5th console generation that we've been alive for.
Something like that, yeah.
I know I started with the N64, and that was around the same time as the first PlayStation. So, you go from 1 to 2, and you could just measure it by the PlayStation, I guess. So just like 5 generations of multiple consoles between 3 different companies, each of them doing similar things, each of them doing different things. And I think that, as gamers, our tastes have been kind of forced to evolve along with that. And I think with that comes a lot of indecision. And I think it's also due in part to just age and patience, I remember, and this is going to be a deep cut for a lot of people, but Adam Sessler of X-Play fame.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. Talk about dating ourselves.
I know. And this is with G4 coming back.
Oh, yeah. I'm super about that.
And this was, I remember something Sessler said, when he was doing game reviews on a YouTube channel post leaving G4. And he was always the older guy of G4 as far as I'm concerned. He was always kind of stuck out in comparison to everybody else there, because everybody else seemed a lot younger, a lot more kind of that energetic 20s, and he was just kind of the.
He was the elder statesman. Elder statesman of the group.
Was very much the elder statesman. I don't want to call him the old man of the group, but he very much had a different vibe. And something that he mentioned I think in regard to like Grand Theft Auto 5, which I had a lot of issues with his review, mostly because he praised Trevor, who was the worst fucking game character I've ever seen in my life.
Fair.
But he made a comment about how it's just like sometimes it's hard to play, and I get these questions of, am I getting too old to do this?
Yeah.
Which I don't necessarily agree, because I think that these things are designed by people who've been around this industry for a long time. They're led by people who've been in this industry for a long time. Whatever issues there may be with the company and how it's held in practice. I mean, we're talking about older people who are still making games for even younger people, and they're trying to say something. I think what you're having trouble with is that you haven't found something that moves you in the same way other things have moved you before.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I think that I hate to say that, but I think we might have moved past that era in games where you can make that kind of deep connection like we do with a Mass Effect or a Dragon Age or like an Ezio figure, I don't see many games doing what Mass Effect did, building up relationships, even though, at the end of the day, all of those relationships are, the illusion of control is ever present when it comes to Mass Effect, because everybody has the same amount of choices. It's not going to be unique to every single person. There's going to be groups of people who did the same kind of choices.
Right.
And because based on their preferences, like for example, you and I prefer having our Shepard with Liara because that makes sense for how we perceive Shepard.
Right.
There's other things about Shepard that you and I would probably differ with, but that's something that we see as essential to Shepard is the relationship with Liara, the relationship with like a Garrus, and so on and so forth. But then as you break it down, different facets mean different things to either of us. And it would be the same case for everybody else. And I think that, we're chasing that dragon.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with chasing that dragon is I think that dragon went extinct.
Yeah.
And I think, or it went into hibernation. I think that the industry has just moved so much from single player for a bit. And was so pivoted towards multiplayer. And now I think that it's kind of the playing field's evening out again. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yeah, I mean, especially with like AAA games like Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy Remake, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the things that it's evening out, but even as it's evening out, and I don't know if it's just because there's so many different games and so many different outlets out there that it's hard to narrow down.
And so many different people making games now, even though that that's very much on the slow uptake. There are still newer voices, new people being LGBT plus people of color who are now getting into the position where they can make games,
which is a wonderful thing, and I'm all for it. But I don't know if it's just because there's not like only 3 games to focus on in a calendar year anymore, or anything like that.
Yeah,
or if it's just. I'm like you said, I'm chasing a proverbial dragon because I'm looking for specific things. Like I'm looking for a narrative story that's choice-based, that has this kind of a fighting system, or that has this kind of a thing, and have all the characters in it just hit a certain way. So I don't know if it's just my expectations are too high, or if there's so much out there I'm not finding something, or if it's just, like you said, I'm just getting older and nothing's going to hit like it used to.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was, what I'm getting out of Final Fantasy is hitting the same vein that I get from like a Shepard or Liara or a Inquisitor Cassandra type thing in Dragon Age. Because I was just thinking I was listening to Normandy FM.
Oh, big shout out to those guys. I mean, those guys, again, if you love BioWare, I know we've shouted them out before, but if you love BioWare and you just want to listen to some fun yet serious conversation about Mass Effect, Dragon Age, listen to those guys. Please go support them any way you can, whether it just be downloading, following them on Twitter. They're wonderful people. And one day, hopefully, our paths will cross, and I will cry if I ever actually do something with them.
Because by God, you keep trying. And
oh man, I'm shooting my shot, John. I'm shooting my
every
shot
every time. But yeah, I only I bring that up just because I was thinking about how, because that's where my head's just been. I don't know if it's just because I'm focusing on the relationship because I finally feel like I have a great relationship, and I would like my characters to kind of reflect the same. So it's just pairs like Cloud and Tifa, and the Inquisitor and Cassandra, and Shepard and Liara, and so on, where it's just like that's where for me I feel like that itch keeps getting scratched. I've found that, but it's not necessarily in the same kind of style of game, I guess. It's just, I suppose it's just a matter of kind of keeping your ear to the ground and looking out for those things that are fitting your criteria. But I think what for you specifically, I think that problem is that I think you want it all in one wrapper.
I think so, yeah.
And I think that the industry isn't going to, the way it's built isn't going to give it to you that easily in that form, at least. So I think what it might be is that you have to just split them and put it into category A, category B, and then cumulatively through multiple things you kind of get that feeling again. But I mean that's just my opinion and a theory based off of at least my personal experience. Take from it, take from it what you will.
No, it makes a lot of sense.
And
again, I think you're close to 100% there, because I think I'm just searching for all, let's say 10 categories in one, one facet, one unit.
Because arguably, I think Mass Effect does that for you.
Yeah,
because it's a character-based game where you have almost complete control over how the character looks,
or at least the illusion of control too.
The illusion of control, yeah. And you get the decision of you can do X or Y, but then you can also choose Z, and which would surpass the other two for ABC reasons.
Yeah. And again, it's a series of 3 games, going back to your Ezio thing. So you see a character development.
I mean, I think that just goes to how we're kind of built to pay attention to trilogies, which is the Lord of the Rings fault. But it's just, I think we people as a whole get attached to. I mean, that's why you have fandoms. That's why you have people who latch on to character, because the more you get with them, the more they build and the more they develop, and you can nitpick and deep dive and analyze and figure out different things about different characters and how they work up against each other. And that's not to say it's going to be frustrating. I mean, it's a search. It's a perpetual search, and you only find it's never a search for perfection. It's a search for satisfaction. And the problem is, I think to bring it on home again, you need to manage expectations and change it to perfection, change it from perfection to satisfaction.
Yeah. And that's something I'm going to have to chew upon. And like I said, folks, loyal listeners listening at home, if you have thoughts, if you have ideas, if you just want to have a conversation about this, because again, like I said, me and John just had a great conversation about it, but I think there's a bigger conversation to be had. Please reach out to us. Please let us know. If you want to do just a special, if you don't want to come on the podcast, if you just want to offline it, I'm cool with that. Or if you want to do like a special Ludic Lives or something, which we bring this home, I'm cool with that too. Just reach out, let us know, because this is a conversation worth having.
Yeah, and we like talking to people. So
yeah, that too.
It's just not assholes.
Oh yeah, fair point. Totally fair point.
All of this was not planned, by the way.
No, after last week's major planning and major everything, like I just want kind of a loose fitting, just whatever is on top of our heads kind of a podcast.
No, I don't blame you. So it's just like we had like general ideas, and honestly, at this point, it's like we save everything for the podcast.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like you're hearing all of this formed live, folks. So it's not it is subject to change. We do it live.
So I'd like to end this week's episode with a joke.
Okay.
What goes down in an alley and has holes in it.
I don't know if I like where this is going.
Do you give up?
Yeah.
Thomas and Martha Wayne.
Oh my! Oh, by the power of Grayskull. That was. Oh boy.
That was a good one, man. You gotta give me that.
And on that note, that's how we close the podcast. On just a. Oh boy.
Dead parents.
A dead. Oh, we didn't land the plane. We crashed the plane.
Oh man, did we ever? Now, loyal listeners, thank you for listening. Thank you for lounging with us. And now, John, send us off as only you personally can.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been John Torres. On behalf of Antonicus Maximus, my hetero life mate, co-host, we thank you. Have a good night. Thank you for lounging.
Bye!